Narrative arc. Woo. Okay. Narrative arc, a story structure that moves through key stages. Okay. Now, I will say 90, I'm completely making up the statistic, but I'm going to do so with a lot of confidence. Are you ready? 96.2% of stories in scripture utilize this narrative arc, or that has an introduction, rising tension, climax, falling action, resolution. Okay. You're going to find like one super weirdo story every once in a while. Usually, Jesus does some funky stuff with a parable. Even that, when he breaks this pattern, that's a huge tell in itself. That Jesus is like, bro, I like totally jacked up the story. I'm trying to make a point here, okay? Like, I didn't resolve it. You know, like at the end of the prodigal son, where Jesus, like the father invites the son into the home, and then the story just stops, and you're like, what did did he like? Him not resolving that is in itself a huge emphasis. So story arcs generally always follow this. This is very common in the historical books, the gospels, basically any narrative in scripture, which is a ton of scripture. You're going to follow this. It's always used to build dramatic tension. Okay. Now, I will say real quick, sometimes this is an issue we have in women's Bible studies. I'm going to address it really quickly. There were a lot of Bible studies written probably in the 80s and 90s that were emotional for the sake of being emotional. Okay. That's not good. But then I think there's a little bit of an overreaction where I literally just heard someone say recently, well, I'm not going to be emotional. I want to find truth. And it made me cringe a little bit because the truth is often very emotional. Like the fact that God killed death is pretty emotional. Like, well, it's just true. Okay, so let's not pit emotions and truth against each other. What's wrong with emotions is when they're off point. By the way, that's also a problem with facts. Like if you're being super factual and it's a poem, like you're doing it wrong. Okay, so we don't want to be factual or emotional. We just want to be whatever the text is. Is the text emotional? Be emotional. Is the text factual? Be factual. We don't have the right to decide what our style is going to be. The Bible comes with a style. We match the style. So most narratives do have dramatic tension, which means you do not need to be boring when you are teaching a biblical narrative. You need to build that dramatic tension. Like, if we don't know where the author is going, they need to feel, we need to take them on that journey. They need to feel the tension. Like, whatever you do when you're teaching a narrative, don't just like start and be like, hey guys, I'm going to tell you the story of David and Goliath. He kills Goliath. Wow, you ruined that story, bro. We're like 30 seconds in. You killed it. Like you just like be like, we're gonna see what happened. I don't know. He gets that. Gosh, Goliath is so big. David's so small. What's gonna happen? I don't care if they know what's gonna happen. We want them to experience the narrative again, right? That's the purpose of a story arc, is to experience the narrative. So we have to make sure that we follow this. Um, Narrative structure also often gives us theological insight and emotional impact. Okay, and I'm about to give you a little piece of gold here in a second. We're gonna figure this out. It's about resolution, so stay tuned. All right, narrative arc in the Joseph story. Here's a good example. You have your introduction. This is a very vanilla narrative arc, so that's why I picked Joseph. It follows the pattern very easily. Joseph is favored by Jacob, and he has all these dreams. That's your intro. And your introduction, usually there's a lot of characterization in the introduction. You're finding out who the people are. It's usually setting up some sort of tension or problem. Then we have the rising tension, right? Oh my gosh, he's betrayed. He's sold into slavery. He's falsely accused. He's in prison. This is a dumpster fire. What are we going to do? We want everyone to feel the dumpster fire, right? They should feel the flames of the dumpster fire right now. This is terrible. This is bad. Then the climax. Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dream and he's elevated to power. Yay, everybody's so pumped for Joseph right now. Then falling action. The brothers arrive. Tension builds. Identity is hidden. Okay. Then the resolution. Joseph reveals himself and he reconciles with his family, and God's purpose is explained. This is the piece of gold I want us to know for the narrative arc. 8 times out of 10, when I hear chicks in America teach a story, they almost always stop after the climax. This is why this is a big problem. Hebrew narrative rarely puts the main point in the climax. Okay, Hebrew narrative almost always puts the main point in the resolution. So if you're teaching children's church and they're like, tell the story of Joseph, and it stops when he gets a promotion, be like, I got to add a couple of chapters, lady. Sorry. Like, that's not where God ends that story. So the part where he says, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. That is the main point of the story of Joseph. So almost every single narrative arc has this resolution, and almost every time the author pulls aside the curtain and they come forward and the events slow down and there's dialogue or there's a statement or the author makes a point or the main character makes a point, and it's usually really concise and really well placed, and that's almost always the main point of the narrative. So
Okay.
where does the author usually put the main point in biblical narratives?
At the end.
Resolution.
Yes, resolution, the end, not the climax. Americans love the climax because that would make the best action movie. I get it, right? And, you know, it's weird when Joseph reveals himself. Like, what the heck? Who even knows what's going on there? But the point is, like, we want to see what the author is emphasizing. It's almost always at the end. Genesis 22, right? This is another one, right? We always are like, we end it when Abraham didn't even kill his own, didn't even withhold his son, right? We always end it there. That's not the main point. That's the climax. That's a big deal, by the way. I don't want to downplay the climax. Like, everyone should be holding their breath whenever that knife goes in the air, but that's not the main point. So Genesis 22, God tests Abraham by commanding him to sacrifice Isaac. Then there's rising tension. Abraham obeys without hesitation. He travels to Moriah. He builds the altar. He binds Isaac. He prepares the knife, right? Ladies, when you are teaching a narrative, the rising tension, drag it out. All right, that the author is building that tension, build it with him. Don't skip it because it's lame. It's supposed to be lame so that it builds tension for the climax. Like, don't suck all the oxygen out of the fire. Then we hit the climax, right? Abraham stretches out his hand to slaughter the son, and then the angel of the Lord stops him and provides a ram, and then Isaac is spared. Now, here's the resolution. This is where we need to open our eyes and start looking for the main point. God affirms Abraham's fear of the Lord, and he provides a substitute, right? He provides a substitute, and then he reaffirms the covenant. And this is where we learn Abraham names the place that God provides. God provides. So, yes, should we learn that we should always be willing to sacrifice everything for God? Yes, that's a great secondary point. But the primary point is God provides what he demands. Right? This is a narrative about the provision of God. And yes, it is also about the testing. I don't want to downplay. Narratives are often complex. There's usually 1, 2, or 3 big deals, right? But the biggest one is always in the resolution. Hey, did you guys know that we have a free Bible study at www.womenteachtheword.com? You don't even have to type in your email, for now, at least. So better go grab it. Fancy would appreciate it.